Welcome to Cut the COVID Crap, part 47. Vaccinating your children, that's on you, not on Elmo. The t-shirt of the week. Civil disobedience is a sacred duty when the state becomes lawless or corrupt. That's Gandhi. And Martin Luther King Jr. One has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. I'm not saying ignore the law, but you have to think of your morals yourself and act accordingly. That's the most important. And if do what you should do in circumstances um, that don't make sense anymore. Anyway, I wanted to start with the question: why do people feel disgusted about pedophiles? Maybe a strange question to start with, but you'll see later on what I'm at. Um, well, I hope still people still feel disgusted about pedophiles or pedophilia. Um, I think the main reason is that children are innocent, and you want to protect them from people manipulating them. That to me is the most obvious reason. I mean, um, you can have sex with older people as long as there's no um, how do you call it? No rape, no force used. It's it's a mutual agreement, and that's fine. But with underage children, it's never allowed, even if the the, the pedophile says like, oh, there was consent. No, you don't do that to young children. I hope we're still those values at least exist in society these days. So no matter what the pedophile says, it is not allowed. Full stop. Now the bridge to vaccinating. I mean, like my own history, like when COVID came and before the vaccinations were there, I was like, oh well, I was pretty mainstream, believe the mainstream. Once the vaccinations are developed, that's then we're going to be good with COVID and no problem. Well, uh, over time, it became to me more and more strange, the messages that they were very quickly developed. The repurposing drugs was very much discouraged, and so that smells to me, and that's for me a reason to dig into it. But nevertheless, I can still imagine that you think like just like me, like the majority of the people don't have expertise in that area. You have to believe what other people tell you. The question is, who do you listen to? Um, so if back then when the vaccinations were there, you said like, you know what, I'm told they're good, and I'm not a doctor, I'm not a vaccinologist, I'm not I don't have expertise. I'll do it. Fair enough, I think. You decided for your own body, you whether you inform yourself better or not. It's your decision as an adult. Um, but now you're children, right? I mean, you let's say you made a decision, you got vaccinated, and now 2.5 years further down the road, you unless you really put your head in the sand, you must have heard governments lying by now. I mean, a president of the US that says if you get vaccinated, you don't get COVID. That is a lie. It's not with the knowledge at the time it was true. No, that was a lie at the time it was spoken. Um, Prime Minister saying that it's a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Yeah, that is a lie. I mean, a medical intervention like any medicine or a vaccination, that is a risk benefit decision for the individual. So with that history of the last 2.5 years with blunt lying, uh, I think you have the responsibility to question that. I'm not saying vaccinations don't work, but the messages from many authorities were extremely biased, at least. Dissent of opinions was not allowed, and you're threatened to you're marginalized in society, or you're threatened from your job. So, but still, it's an individual decision what to do with that. Um, when it comes to your own decisions, but when it comes to your children, I think it's a different story. I mean, given this, if you now still have to make the decision on whether or not to vaccinate your children, especially in the light of in the last few weeks that on the one hand in the US they said 6 months old to 5 year old is they encourage them to get vaccinated, whereas in Denmark it's the other way around. They said like sorry, we don't vaccinate children anymore. Up to 18, we don't vaccinate them anymore, and we allowed it from I think age 13 to 18 before, but yeah, we backtrack on that now with the current insight. We don't recommend it anymore. So conflicting messages. So, but it's your children, right? I mean, if you make a decision for yourself and it goes wrong, that's on you. But I mean, that has an influence on you. But like, imagine you make that decision from your children, and your child gets a vaccine injury. Unlikely, for sure, but possible still. What do you say to your injured child when he or she grows up? It was the right decision at the time? Well, your child will say like, okay, what was the information at the time then? Didn't you see governments lying, and didn't you want to look into it? And you can say, yeah, yeah, but the only thing I hear is that is recommended. True, if you look at mainstream media, yeah, that's the more or less the only message that you hear. It's safe and effective. Just like Elmo says, it's safe and effective. Elmo, targeting, I don't know, 3 or 4 year old kids, says it's safe and effective. And yeah, I want to make a step there. I can imagine that I would work for alcoholic beverage company. I don't know, Heineken or something. I could imagine I would work for there. I mean, there's a demand for it. It's not good for you, alcohol, but there's demand for it. I drink sometimes, not overly much, but sometimes. Uh, Fair enough. I don't have a problem with that. I would probably prefer a different kind of company, but I don't see like an ethical problem with that. However, if I work for Heineken and Heineken would target alcohol sales on young kids, uh, I think I have a moral responsibility, hence the T-shirt, to say no, that's unacceptable. And whether I work for Heineken as a in the branding or marketing department or the finance department or cleaning their desks, it doesn't matter. I think as a human being, you have a moral obligation to um, yeah to set your limits somewhere for where you're working. So I'm appalled by the like yeah, the people producing that Elmo clip, like saying trying to convince young kids that the vaccines are safe and effective without giving the safe and effective message. That's the prevalent message, right? Without giving any numbers. I mean, if you think for yourself, safe. Look at the side effects that are reported. What is safe? I mean, I'm not saying it's overly unsafe, but yeah, if you look at all the approved vaccinations, isn't this one the least safe? I mean, what is your bar for safety? Um, Most previous vaccinations with fewer reported side effects were taken off the market. So, what is your safety bar? And effective, I don't know of any vaccine that is approved that is less effective than this one. Every boosters, I don't know, depending on the country where you're at, 3 is not enough anymore. We go to 4 or 5, or it's a every 4 months repeat. Is that effective? So imagine you work on producing that Elmo video in whatever capacity, and in a year's time, it's like it becomes apparent, like, you know what? There's actually long-term side effects. Are you gonna be the person that says like, I don't know, I didn't know any better. That's all I heard. All I heard. 2 years ago, you could have said that, but now with all this information, what do you want to do? Do you still want to say like, I don't want to hear anything else? I mean, you must have heard the the lies of governments or prime ministers and presidents. Then it's time to look into it. Sure, if you look at mainstream media, you'll get the same message, safe and effective. But look at the research they base it on. If you look at the 6 to 4 year old research that the US bases its recommendations on, it you don't need a PhD to read the analysis or the original documents. It doesn't make sense. I mean, if you have a sample of 4,000 and 3,000 are deleted, that stinks, right? Do you need a PhD for that? And still, I can imagine that you think like, it's published, it's quoted, it must be right. But just use common sense. I mean, if 3/4 of the targeted population is excluded, then at least there's got to be some reason, right? And if there's a reason is not mentioned, it stinks. Um, but yeah, I can imagine that you don't want to draw the conclusion, but then at least look at the people um, criticizing this, both for and against. Look at the the doctors or the PhDs that look at these documents, comment on these documents, and say why they're good or why they're bad. And then, yeah, I cannot. That's exactly what I do. I mean, I'm not an expert myself. I whatever opinion sorry, whatever subject I that is outside of my own expertise, I look at the experts that are pro and con, and look at if their arguments make sense, whether they are biased or not. On this subject, it's to me as clear as it can be. But I encourage you, do your own research. But in so if you're not willing to do that research, yeah, then what are you gonna say in a year's time? If unlikely, but if your child gets an injury, are you really gonna say like, I didn't know better? Well, you have the chance now to look into it, and still your decision could go either way, but you cannot say anymore, I didn't know. You cannot say, like the Germans in the Second World War, ich habe es nicht gewusst. Please do your own research. Good luck. See you soon.